Studio Series 86 Galvatron is the latest in a long line of repaints of the Kingdom Galvatron mold, and honestly, it's made me question, how many repaints is too many when it comes to a figure? Sure, we've seen it plenty of times before, Seekers get repainted indefinitely. The Sideswipe mold is still going, in fact that's next week's review. But there was one key difference there, most versions of those molds were different characters. But out of the 6 releases of this mold, 5 of them are the same character. Now a lot of you will know that I am all for repaints. I love the fact that you have so many options so you can choose just the right version of a character for you. But some of these were so similar to one another that it does warrant asking, why? Why are there 3 different purple ones? Which version of the figure should I buy? And if that's the case, then you came to the right place, because today, we're going to be discussing them all. So let's take a look at them. Now I am going to preface this by saying that we're going to shoot through the mold first and then cover all the color schemes in order of release. If you're looking for discussion about a very particular color scheme, the timestamps will all be down in the description, but I do highly suggest you stick on through, because we have got some fantastic creators talking about them. But anyway, the sculpted detail and proportions on this figure are absolutely phenomenal. I adore the look of this figure, I always have. There's always been something so striking about Galvatron's design, and this figure emulates it perfectly. It's not a one-to-one proportional recreation of his look in the show or the film, but all the key details are there and they are pulled off pretty much flawlessly in my opinion. And in all honesty, the only thing with the look of the robot mode that I take issue with are the feet. So I'm just gonna start off by saying, these are too hoof-like. You know, they're a little bit stubby, they seem to just point straight down. I feel like they needed to either be a little bit longer or have a little bit of a curve to the foot, because without that, it does make the rest of his legs look a little stumpy, but beyond that, the sculpting on the shins is absolutely flawless. There's little bits of detail that are really sharp. I love the different stages of the knee panels, and just the overall smooth, rounded look really works for me. The thighs are very much the same story. I love the gentle taper in and out to them, they're very rounded. Each individual cylinder is sculpted in, and it looks fantastic, and I love all the detail in the front. The waist pieces are actually really dynamic. I love the way that their hip skirts sit and the crotch plate kind of conceals the gaps. The torso though is absolutely flawless. The way that it tapers out, the shape and size of it, the fact that it's gone from all the rounded surfaces to really harsh angles, the way that the collar pylons sit, I love the little 4-pack abs. This is definitely my favourite part of the look of the figure. I have seen some people say that they think it's too wide. I don't think that's the torso's fault, I think that's more the fault of the arms being a little too wide. They're very cylindrical. Although I don't take too much issue with that, and I love the way that the forearms taper in and all the surfaces are covered in detail. I will say that the hands are a little bit weird though. They don't look bad, they're just a strange shape. And kinda like the hands, I wouldn't say that the head sculpt is flawless. Don't get me wrong, I think it looks good and it's very well sculpted, I just don't think it 100% looks like Galvatron. I think the face looks a little too long, the eyes aren't quite right, and the crown is a little bit too flat on top. Still though, it does the job, and if you really want to, then there is the DNA kit coming out for the 86 version soon, which does replace the head and the hands, so there's an option for you. One thing I do feel the need to make note of though, while the back is very compact and tidy, I don't think it's the cleanest looking. It's not necessarily gappy, but it looks very technical, and I have seen that bother some people, so that's just something to consider. But even though I have a few little issues with it, I do really like the robot mode on this mold. It's a very cohesive figure in just about every version of the deco. It's very proportionate, it's big, like really big, I love that. And overall, it's just a really good representation of what I'd say is easily a top 5 Decepticon design of all time. Right up there with Soundwave, Tarn, Overlord, and Tidal Wave. Yes, I do like blue and purple bad guys, how could you tell? But yeah, this looks fantastic. And it's very playable too. Accessories wise, the figure of course comes with the cannon. It looks absolutely fantastic, it's so well sculpted and it's huge. There's 2 positions it can be on the arm. There's a little tab and notch on the bicep joint to stop it from turning so it can be a bit more accurate, or you can plug it onto the forearm and have it a little bit more mobile for posing. I really like these options and they give you a lot of expressive freedom. The cannon does come apart in 2 pieces, which I do have a problem with that I'll detail later, but for now, great accessory. He also comes with 2 identical guns which are supposed to emulate the look of the Revenge. I suppose they do a pretty good job, but if you want them to pair with Unicron, there's a better option out there, which we will get to later. But for now, you can stick him in his hands to use as guns, which I don't think looks great. There's tabs so you can store them both on the back, which looks alright, but I think the best use for these things is to plug them together. It makes this pylon thing, which isn't the most useful thing in the world. I suppose you can use it as a double gun, but If you take the matrix on a chain that's also included with this figure, you can slide it over the top and it makes a display for the matrix. At least that's how I use it. I don't know how intentional this was, but it does work. And speaking of, the matrix chain does look pretty good. It's just using the Earthrise matrix again, of which I think every version of this figure uses solid plastic. You can drape the chain over his neck, but don't use the tab or else it rides up way too high. Just let it sit there. This does look pretty good, especially if you're using it for an 86 movie display, but if not, then it's very easy to just set off to the side and forget about. Accessories here are mostly pretty good. I do think that the revenge ships are a little bit redundant, but the matrix chain is a nice feature, and the cannon, well, come on, that's just necessary. And they all do look really good, but they'd be nothing without the figure's great posing. The head is on a very good ball joint that can go pretty much every which way. The shoulders go all the way up and all the way around pretty easily. There's bicep swivels, really good double elbows, wrist swivels, a waist swivel. If you move the side skirts out of the way, the hips can move out really far and go forward and back pretty well. There's thigh swivels, slightly below average knees, and subpar ankle pivots. The posing on this figure is really good, at least from the thighs up. Those lower legs are a little bit disappointing. Don't get me wrong, they're not terrible, but the rest of the figure just has some incredible ranges, and these are a little subpar. But thanks to the posing and the accessories, this mold is a really good tactile experience, and that definitely continues to the transformation. This conversion is one that I absolutely adore. It is just a lot of big panels folding up and moving to different places, but it does it in such an interesting and slightly unexpected way. I love the way that the torso kind of moves around itself, the way that the legs and back seamlessly integrate with one another. The only disappointing thing about this is the parts forming. I understand that if you want to have a properly proportionate cannon for this guy, then you kind of need to have the parts forming, but I just wish there was a proper dedicated space where the back half of this cannon could fit, because in a lot of places it either looks like or it doesn't fit right. It's a bit of a shame, but I will say, the cannon mode is pretty good. There isn't really much new sculpting on display, but a lot of the robot parts are really well hidden. I love all the sculpting and proportions of the front barrel and the lead up to it, the details on the side, the fin on the top. The treads look absolutely fantastic. I will say that the struts for the treads look a little bit goofy, but they do look better than some third-party offerings that I've seen. But besides what you see, there isn't really too much to this mode. You know, you do have some storage for the accessories, the Matrix has that tab that I mentioned before, and there's some dedicated tabs for the guns to fit either side of the cannon barrel. But that aside, it's just kind of the cannon itself, which is a goofy looking mode, but it's what he's supposed to be, come on. You can splay him out to make him look a little bit more dynamic though, which does look really good. But yeah, overall, this mold is just a really good one. It's got a lot of tactile features, it looks great on a shelf, it poses well, it's an all-timer for me. But now we're all familiar with the mold, let's look at some decos. Kingdom Galvatron was the first release of this mold, and it is a pretty good one. Now, I would say that the choices of color here are very standard, but they do everything they need to. You know, the purple of the day is just a bog standard magenta, the black is just black. The grey is a nice silvery shade that pairs pretty well with the silver paint, but it's still just a very standard color scheme for a Galvatron figure. There's definitely things to like here, don't get me wrong. I love the clear cannon. It looks really good, apart from you can see some of the structural bits within it. The battle damage is the most unique part of this version. There's some very pale purple scuff marks on the arms and the chest. I do think that looks really good. I think it gives him a lot of character. I'm not so hot on the marks on the shins, but oh well, you win some, you lose some. The only things that I think detract from this version are, one, there was a mass misassembly where the arms were the wrong way around, so you have to have the shoulder pins facing forward, which isn't the end of the world, but it does alter the look a little. But also, this version of the mold was just never built the best. At least my copy. You know, this is pretty good, but I do think it got outclassed very quickly. It's pretty good, but it gets better.
I've already yapped about this guy in a Diabite, but you know what they say about men. There's always more to chew on. I think all the different tones of gray used on this guy are choice. It's not gonna get you 50 Shades, but as a woman who's read the whole first book and watched all 3 movies, trust me, you are better off without the rest. The lighter shades are slabs of marble, the darker shades are a sensual slate, and the paint on his face is a dead ringer for the latter, even if it's a little bit shinier. But who among us doesn't have grease all over their gourds? We're Transformers collectors. Look in a mirror before you cast the first stone. The purple paint on the cannon is noticeably darker than both shades of purple plastic. That's right, both. You heard it here first, folks. This particular specimen gets not 1, but 2 distinct hues of grape-flavored ABS. And that BS does not stand for what you think it does. No. He's all beautiful stuff. Yes, he is. From his shiny dress shoes to his glossy jockstrap up to the tip of his trident crest. He's everything you've ever wanted in a man, including being incredibly submissive. I will once again beg for invalid validation. His crown was red once, right? It had to be. I know it was. You're hiding it from me. Tell me it was red! Unfortunately, the QC goblin struck me on this copy, and the right and proper cannon holes do not work rightly or properly. They're very loose in a fashion comparable to a goose, and thus require the usage of the forearm holes instead. 0 out of 10, Joy Ruin. Transformation reveals the figure's singular splash of shiny silver paint, as well as an even shinier rub sign. And when we're talking about things a crow would love, look at this cannon. Look at this carrot. Look at this... I mean, it kind of looks like a peanut. Looks like Galvatron's been shopping for his weapons at Claire's. And as much as I appreciate a frugal king, I hope he gets that disinfected. You might be wondering, where are his stickers? On the sheet, in the drawer, where they will remain till the day I'm dead and buried. Back to your regularly scheduled Loubat.
This is weird and different.
Hello.
Welcome TheSheepWielder to the channel. He is not recording in his usual style because he is working on something particularly different on his channel, which you should be checking out right now. Actually, not right now. Finish this video and then check him out. Like you should.
I'm launching an OnlyFans.
Behold Galvatron Unicron Companion Pack. Footage kindly provided by DrLockdown. Thank you very much.
So I bought that one because I own HasLab Unicron, and I thought the little guys would be a cool addition. So he's translucent purple around his limbs and around various parts of the figure with white panel lining that just really fills out the rest of the figure. Talking about the figure itself, very solid. I have no issues with mine. The obvious concerns of he's clear plastic.
Yeah.
So is something gonna break. But I have never had that cause for concern while manhandling my one.
One main thing to consider is the accessories. Of course, he has, you know, the pylon of Matrix Death and the cannon and stuff.
So the thing with the accessories, so when HasLab Unicron was, I can't remember how far into development it was, and it's not entirely relevant. He came with these little slug minifigures of Rodimus and Galvatron, but this one came with like 15.
Yeah.
And I think it came with like
Huge
most of the
stock image.
seekers, come with most of them, and they were designed to plug into the head stand, because Unicron's head you can remove and pose on its own to replicate the end of the movie.
Yeah, as well as some of the ships. So he came with the Autobot shuttle, the Quintesson ship, and then the ship from the planet of Junk.
The accessories are fine. They weren't the driving force for me. It was full retail price for extra accessories for a £600 HasLab that was like the biggest struggle to get funded compared to any of them.
Yeah, the way that I see it, it seems to be, if you want one that's a bit different, go for either this or the Toy Colors version. I don't think either of them fit as, like, your collection's main Galvatron, unless you're really into the grey. But this one is definitely the biggest gimmick.
Yes, that is very much the best way to describe this one. It is a gimmick toy that is unbearably niche. The closest thing I can think on par, that even then it doesn't come anywhere near to the quintessential practicalness of it, is the Optimus Prime's corpse. It's that not selects cardboard box with like the graffiti art and the military font branding on it, and even then this one's got less going for it unless you've got HasLab Unicron. The dead one, well, at least you've got the trailer and, you know, it's got a different head sculpt and everything. This one has none of that, but like I say, it's very surprisingly robust. There is no slack joints, there is no tolerance issues. I have absolutely no problems with it. Well, thanks for having me, Loubat. I'm fucking going. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official MrLoubat YouTube channel.
So it's repaint time on the MrLoubat channel. Now, here we have the Legacy Evolution version of Galvatron. I know MrLoubat will be taking a look at the SS86 version. Wait, what other versions did they release on this? Wait... Gen Selects, Unicron Pack, Kingdom. I think I've seen the Kingdom one before. Oh, for fuck's sake. F this guy, man. Brought me back to fucking talk about the same figure, just without battle damage. Here we have this
air fryerless, no huzz bitch boy,
who's literally the same figure as the Kingdom version, just without less painted detail shit. Just without less painted shit. It's the same figure. Okay, so looking at this figure in more detail, working from the head, we have a lovely painted silver with some orange, the same as the Kingdom version. Working my way down to the abdomen, painted red, the same as the Kingdom version. Working down a little further, painted shins, with some nice shin details, to be honest with you. Same as the Kingdom version. This is the same figure. How many times do I have to say it? This is the same figure as the Kingdom version. Although the paint, or the moulded purple, looks a little different on the Kingdom version, a tad bit darker. So you're telling me Hasbro, the multi-billion-dollar company, made use of their moulds more than once? Them. In all fairness, this figure is actually pretty good. The mould is nice. I've been playing with this guy for about 5-10 minutes just to get re-familiarised with him, and if I'm honest with you, it makes sense for them to reissue this guy, because removing that battle damage gives them just a close enough look to the 86 film to get away with it, minus the transparent carrot gun. Nice painted silver and black though. But back to the main figure, it is literally the same thing as the Kingdom version. Although, mine, quite floppy. He has been on the shelf for a little while, so his joint should be, you know, the same out of the box, but he's floppy. In all fairness, I am hoping the SS86 version has that Legacy United QC, and he's a bit more solid. I haven't watched MrLoubat's video yet, however, here's to hoping. Same as the Kingdom version. And here we have the alt mode. Yeah, not much to say, because if I say anything, it'll just be talking about the mould. The purple looks a little different to the Kingdom one, and it's missing the damage. I'm actually thinking of making the upgrade to the 86 version, because the more I play around with this Galvatron mould, it's actually good, and I'm not surprised Hasbro used that money and what they had to go for a second, and just repaint it as many times as they did, because it is a good mould. It's fun to play around with, when the legs aren't floppy noodles. Okay, aside from that, I don't really have anything else to say. Same as the Kingdom one. Pew 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 pew. And why the f*** did I get brought back for this? So many other figures out there, but no. Same as the Kingdom version.
Read the disclaimer! I'm the other one, you bastard!
When I was growing up, I was exposed to a lot of different Transformers media. Sure, I watched the movies in theaters, and caught every episode of Animated in the morning on Cartoon Network. But the internet was a vast and special place, and back then, the website basically had all the previous television media for free. But that wasn't all. The library had books. Books. One such book was a vintage collection of Target 2006, and in it I was privy to what would become one of my childhood faves, Straxus. I still can't remember much from the pages, it's all fallen out of memory, but my time being enamored with him still remains to this day. It's why I was so fond of the 2010 Deluxe Class remake. That was one of my favourite toys growing up, and to this day I still adore it, faults and all. As I grew older, and as the franchise changed and evolved, I really wanted a new version in line with the War for Legacy 86 combined aesthetic, and for the time it seemed like we'd be getting one. Rumours of a leader class version circulated for ages before they sort of went silent and everyone pretended they never existed. In hindsight, apparently this was the version we were meant to get. A weird throwback to that time he was a floating head in the comics. And, no thanks. Cool idea, but maybe not as a toy. I genuinely thought it was an AI image when I first saw it because it was so left of field and all over the place. Then it finally hit us, with little to no fanfare from the League Squad. The bastard from Darkmount became reality as a retool of Galvatron. At this point, I was a little more skeptical. See, in the years since, I'd given the New Age version a try, which itself was a retool of their Galvatron. Unfortunately, there was one key difference. This one was unbelievably shit. It's honestly the one New Age figure I genuinely hate. They're a fantastic company otherwise. But after that, I was cautiously optimistic, because conceptually, these two were doing the same thing. Thing is, there's something you should really do with Hasbro these days. Trust them. Time and time again since Legacy has begun, I've gone into something expecting to hate it and have been utterly blown away. While I didn't expect to hate Straxus by any means from the outset, I was concerned he'd underwhelm me. Turns out I had nothing to fear. Straxus f***s. The Galvatron mold was already brilliant, but this just takes it to a whole other level. The head somehow goes more accurate whilst still making this bonkers design work. You don't even notice it's flat as a pancake. That's usually the first thing you'd realize. The torso retooling has gone way further than I expected them to go, creating a monolithic pectoral section with the triangles picked out perfectly. Like, do you know how hard it is to pick out reds? Do you know how often companies get this wrong? Especially on a color as dark as this. Said red does get a bit wispy on the shoulders, but from a distance you can barely notice it. So all in all, they've done a really good job. I also love the subtle screen tones on show. They're there to bring the comic stylings to life, but subtle enough where Straxus can easily fit on the shelf with any of your other War for Legacy 86 figures. In fact, that applies to all the comic throwbacks, such as the black, what are these? I don't know, they're just cool is what. And sure, the accessories could be better, as the axe is pretty ill-defined and shaped, and the cannon is just kinda there. But if that's the worst thing this mode does, we're doing pretty well overall. The transformation is just divine, as the Galvatron transformation has always been. I've often seen people complaining that it's over-engineered for what Galvatron is supposed to be, folding in and out when the torso is supposed to just reveal the head and that's it. Personally though, I think it's an inspired use of mass reshaping that so easily could have done it lazily, like so many third-party versions do. I'll never forget messing with Galvatron the first time at a burger shop in Parramatta, where the chef kept yelling slurs at the staff in Italian. Okay, maybe it wasn't the best memory, but the point is, it's always been a fantastic transformation, and Straxus is no different. I'd argue it's even better now, as the arms properly lock into place and flow with the rest of the kibble. It's not something they had to retool, it's purely for vehicle mode accuracy, but I'm very glad they did. And the alt mode is great. It's a bit more canon-y than the comic by virtue of being a retool of old Galvi, but that alt mode was always great to begin with, so I don't see that as an issue at all. The fact they were able to make an alt mode out of this design at all is commendable as is, even if I still prefer the old wheel tank. It does get a bit messier towards the back now that he no longer has the iconic for Galvatron knee spikes, but it's an awesome trade-off with the new tooling up front. The three-pronged cannon surroundings are a wonderful new take on the old design, and I especially love how the axe becomes the classic spikes on top. Sure, it means the robot mode has to contend with weirdness with its accessories, but it's such a cool idea. The new cannon demolishes the original with its awesome sleekness, and I didn't even realize until Thew pointed it out, but the black stripe actually slides straight to the back. That's so subtle and so cool. In essence, Straxus takes everything Galvatron did so well and turns it up to 11. He's the serving-tiest of serving leader class figures, and for me, he is the definitive wearer of the Galvatron molds. I know a good chunk of it probably boils down to nostalgia, but the other versions just don't give me the same feeling that Straxus does. In a year where exclusives have been banger after banger after banger, this stands above them all and delivers an experience unlike any other. If you want to experience this mold in a singular capacity, this is the way to do it. Don't hesitate. Let Straxus into your heart today, you dumb f***.
And that brings us back around to the 86 version, which I'd have to say is definitely battling it out with Straxus to be my favourite. You know, the actual layout of the deco is completely identical to the Legacy version, but the actual colour choices in the moulded plastic and the paint is what sets this figure apart. Because good god, that purple is gorgeous. It's got such a deep and rich hue, and it's got a slightly metallic quality to it, so it catches the light really nicely. It's also a lot closer a shade to the animation models. Those animation-esque shades continue to the rest of the figure. The grey is a lot paler and it lets the detail shine a little bit more. The black has been replaced with a dark grey, which I personally really like. It kind of brings down the contrast a little and lets the purple shine. The cannon is now an opaque orange, which is a lot closer to the cartoon. And all the metallic silver apart from on the Matrix is gone, replaced with just the normal matte shades, which most of you will know that I prefer. I don't know, this version feels like it was just tailor-made to my tastes. I'm not somebody that thinks that the cartoon decos are the be-all and end-all, but I do really appreciate the style that Hasbro have been going for with them lately, and these colours are so vibrant and they just sing to me. That and the fact that this is probably the most solid version of this figure that I've owned. I do love all of the changes that Straxus brings to the party, and I do honestly think that he's probably the best version of this mold. Maybe not for stability, one of the hips on mine is a little bit shit, but looks-wise, the changes in transformation, the accessories, I think he's probably the best one if you can find him. Of course, 86 is currently on the market, and I definitely recommend that version, even for full retail leader price. You know, this mold has always been worth the price of admission, even pushing it up to 60 with the Gen Select releases. You know, it's always been a good, big, solid figure. Lots of accessories, lots of posing. I'd recommend pretty much every single one of these. I would say that the Kingdom and Legacy versions don't really have a place unless you particularly like the aesthetic they're going for, if not for the fact that you can find them for pretty cheap now because Legacy was way overproduced, so it went to a lot of the bargain sites, and Kingdom is pretty affordable on the aftermarket if you buy him loose. I know mine is, he's on eBay right now, go down in the description below if you want him. But genuinely, there just has not been a bad release of this mold. So I'm gonna leave this fairly open-ended and say whichever version of this mold appeals most to you, go for it. And why not tell me which one that is down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like, it helps a lot. And be sure to subscribe because there's a lot more like this yet to come. Because let's face it, we've got a big year ahead of us. But for the next one, let's go with a little guy.